What is going on, everyone? Welcome into our next divisional draft grades video where we're going to be taking a look back at the draft, talking about who maximized the picks that they had, maybe who stole some really great players, maybe perhaps based on my own evaluations who reached a little bit, or maybe passed on who I think will be better options at the next level. But ultimately just taking a look as well at who these players are, how they fit in with their new teams, and what I think they might be at the next level. I do encourage you to take a look in the description below. I have a new grading criteria for this, really trying to amp up the consistency and transparency with how I come up with these grades. While you're down there, if you could throw a like on the video, I really appreciate it. It takes just a second. It's a meaningful way to support my channel. Also, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of these draft grades videos. And next up, we have my deep dive series coming in just a few weeks. Going to work throughout the entire summer, previewing every NFL team in depth. I think it's the best thing I have to offer on this channel. You're not going to want to miss it, so make sure you're subscribed, and let's get into it. Starting things off with the Buffalo Bills, who I think had a really good draft themselves. I do just want to say, I'm very curious about their right tackle situation because they chose not to address that in the first round. Their only option was Antoine Harrison, so if they weren't big on him as their savior at right tackle, I can understand it at least. But, I do think another year of Spencer Brown at right tackle is basically essentially signing up for another year of not winning a Super Bowl. I think he is a huge liability to critical positions. So I am curious, what their plan is at right tackle as they draft a position in the first round that wasn't on paper a huge need for them. Now, we'll see how that plays out. I'm not here to criticize the move to go get Dalton Kincaid. I'm going to grade this as an A. I think for him to be there at the end of the first round was awesome. I mean, he is a dynamic playmaker, and really, I say it wasn't a need because they have Dawson Knox, but what they did need was a dynamic playmaker whose name is not Stephon Diggs. They need someone else who can separate on his own, and I do think Dalton Kincaid is going to bring that to the table. I mean, this is an organization that has, spent the last couple of years watching Travis Kelce dice them up from the slot, and I think Dalton Kincaid is going to be able to do that likewise against NFL opponents. And about the whole Dawson Knox thing, I'm not too worried about it. They gave him a big contract, hoping he would take another leap like he did in 2021, and he took a step backwards. I mean, his contested catch percentage dropped in half. He's just an adequate run blocker, and I think they were just a little bit disappointed in what he brought to the table, and maybe they were counting on him more last year than what he delivered. So he can fall in as a tight end too. They can do two tight end sets for sure and create some mismatch problems, and he'll still have usage. But I think it's totally fine to look at what Dawson Knox did last year and say, well, we can upgrade there. We can phase that out. So I think they got one of the best, if not the best, pass-catching options in this class. He's going to be more slot receiver than tight end for them anyway, so I look at him that way. I think this is a system, unlike maybe one of those Shanahan offenses where they might have struggled to place a Dalton Kincaid into the offense. Think about Miami really struggling to get someone like Mike Gesicki involved just because of the lack of a run blocking aspect. That's not going to be as much of a problem in Buffalo. So I really like the fit. We're going to give that an A. And then I like even more getting O'Cyrus Torrence at the end of the second round. Torrence was a guy that I would have been comfortable with to Buffalo at the end of the first round, to a lot of teams at the end of the first round, and you get him at the back end of the second round, in my opinion, because of some inferior offensive linemen getting drafted before him, with Torrence becoming available. We mentioned the lack of a Shanahan system in place here. That is partially probably why Torrence fell a little bit, because he's not much of a wide zone stretch blocker. He needed to go to an offense like Buffalo that's much more of a head-up blocking scheme where you're looking at inside zone, duo, pin and pull type of runs, and you're going to get that here in Buffalo. So while you're not getting an upgrade at tackle, I do think O'Cyrus Torrence could be an upgrade, honestly, at either guard spot, probably over Ryan Bates for this year. And I've spent a lot of time as well talking about how Buffalo needs to find a way to get more physical in the month of January and run the ball better. I think getting a guy like O'Cyrus Torrence paving ways up front is going to be a step towards that. So I think that's a steal to get him where they did. But then Dorian Williams in the third round, man, if I didn't establish this criteria, and try to really keep these grades consistent, I would love to give this an S. But I'm telling you, Bills fans, I have a fantastic feeling about this pick. The second you see Demarion Overshown go with the pick before Dorian Williams, you are just so ecstatic that that's who they went with, because if you look at my grading profile for these linebackers, there was 5 players that I thought were third round or better grades, and the other 4 were gone, and this was a need for Buffalo. So not only are you landing kind of the last quote-unquote good linebacker in this class, although I'm not trying to slight my dude Servasia Dennis, who I think in Tampa Bay is going to be a starter someday, but I just look at the history of athletic third-round linebackers who maybe don't have the size of these first-round guys like Quay Walker and Kenneth Murray. And, this is a tangent of mine that I've been on for a long time about don't draft raw athletes in the first round at linebacker. Wait till the third round and take the Dorian Williams of the world, because not only are they just as athletic or maybe a tick below some of these other guys, but they actually have to prove to the coaching staff that they're worthy of starting instead of just getting handed the job and then they can coast off of their tackling numbers and their hype. No, Dorian Williams is going to have to earn this job, understand the coverage, understand his role within the defense, really find that right balance when teams are trying to target him with play action and RPOs. He can earn this job, and by the time he gets it, he's going to be ready to go. I have such a good feeling about Dorian Williams, especially in Buffalo with this staff, who I think is going to do the best with a guy like Dorian. And I talk about him like he's super raw. He's not. The super raw guys are guys like D. Winters, Demarion Overshown, a long list of other linebackers. Dorian Williams, he did have good zone instincts. He did play the run relatively well. It's just by NFL standards, he's going to be very raw. So he's got a lot of developing to do, but his upside is really high. And I really think even if he's not starting right away, he's going to emerge as a really solid starter, if not a great starter for the Buffalo Bills. So I think they killed the first and second days of this draft. But you get to day 3, and again, we're being a little bit, not generous, but just being realistic with the fact that you don't really destroy your draft on day 3. But I think there are certain picks that you can be critical of in certain spots, and for me, Justin Shorter is one of those picks. I'm not trying to trash the guy. I did have a draftable grade on him, but this is a little bit early for a guy like Shorter, who to me was maybe a 7th round dart throw, more or less. I get what they see in him. He has Gabe Davis-esque qualities. He's a big body guy with solid speed. If Gabe Davis is going to be on the way out, maybe Justin Shorter can be a backup to that guy or maybe a starter for that guy. But I'd be incredibly surprised if he reached that level. I just would. To be nice, he was starting to figure things out in his final year at Florida with Anthony Richardson, and he had a couple good games in there showing that deep ball ability. But the injury derailed his season. He couldn't get it back on track. For me, I just, again, we're going off my own evaluations here. I could easily be wrong here, but I think they're going to regret not taking guys like A.T. Perry, Andre Yosevich. I even thought Antoine Green, who Detroit got, was a better player. Brandon Beane's an excellent GM, and if you want to trust his opinion more than mine, I can't say I fault you. But if you are here for my opinion, I don't think that was the right pick in the 5th round. Nick Broker is a fine athlete, decent blocker. I don't see starter traits there. That's why he went in the 7th round. But if you're looking for O-line depth, someone that can probably play four positions on that offensive line and fill in the event of injury, I think he can be that guy. He's got a lot of experience in the SEC, but just not a lot of play strength there. And then Alex Austin, again, I didn't really see it here. I was really surprised to see his name called before his teammate Rajon Wright. I will say it's a scheme fit. Alex Austin played in that quarters-heavy Fangio-style system out in Oregon State. So he's going to understand the defense right away and could be a quality backup and could surprise me. But, to me, I thought there were better cornerback prospects available. It's an end of the 7th round grade. It's not even going to impact their draft grade, but I would be surprised if he turns into anything there. So overall, the Bills are still going to get an A grade from me, despite really having a criticism of the Justin Shorter pick in the 5th round there. It's not enough to knock this off of an A. I think they improved the offense in ways that they needed it. And Dorian Williams, to me, filled a huge need. And even if he's not going to start right away, I think he's going to turn to a really good player for them. So for a team picking at the end of each draft, I think they got great value and great football players. I'm just very curious, again, to see what they do with that right tackle spot. Something to monitor for sure. This show is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy, the easiest place to play fantasy football. The moment this draft is complete, Best Ball Mania 4 goes live, and it is the biggest fantasy football competition of all time. Not even kidding. It's only $25 to enter for your shot at $15 million in total prizes and a first place prize of $3 million. You won't want to miss out on this action. The best part is, because it's best ball format, all you have to do is draft your teams, which you can do at home on your phone thanks to the amazing Underdog app. In Best Ball Mania, you join the tournament, draft your team as you would in any normal fantasy football league, and your lineup is locked in once the draft is complete. No waivers, no trades. That's right, it is set it and forget it until it's time to collect your cash. Underdog automatically optimizes your lineup weekly to create the highest scoring option. What are you waiting for? Get signed up at UnderdogFantasy.com or via the App Store with promo code TFG, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code TFG for your shot at $15 million inside Best Ball Mania 4. Then we get the Miami Dolphins. Shout out to the Dolphins for making this easy on me. They only have 4 picks here. So I really like what they did on day 2. They get Cam Smith at pick 50, who, you know, I think some people will say this is a steal because we saw his name in a lot of first-round mock drafts. You didn't see his name in a lot of first-round mock drafts that I did, though. I had a second-round grade on him. This is right around where I thought he should go. I didn't love his tape. I loved his highlights, if that makes sense. You know, he's got a great first step. He's instinctive. In zone coverage, he made a lot of plays. And now you've got Vic Fangio as the defensive coordinator here, so I see him as a scheme fit. I think he can play in year one in a lot of their packages. You know, they obviously have Xavier Howard and Jalen Ramsey, but Jalen Ramsey has made a lot of, not made a lot of money, but he's made a lot of plays going into that star position in the slot. So if you move Ramsey into the slot, I think Cam Smith can play on the outside. I don't know if Cam Smith can be a full-time slot starter or not, but either way, I do think it's good value at a position of value. So that one's going to get an A from me. And then Devon Achane in the middle to the end of the third round. I mean, you got to give this an A. Not only is it a good value, but the speed. I mean, I feel like we don't even need to talk about it at this point. It's just hilarious how Mike McDaniel, I will say, you know where I'm going with this, like speed. But we've had coaches and front offices that overvalue speed and don't really know how to use it. That's not the case in Miami. Like, he gets Tyreek Hill, he has one of the best years of his career. He gets Jalen Waddle, he blows up. Like, he signs Raheem Mostert, and he balls out. Like, Devon Achane, even if he's not a great 3-down back and he's small, if you asked me before the draft, where would you put Devon Achane if you want to see him be the most productive? I would say either Miami or San Francisco, maybe Philadelphia. They're going to be able to get him in space. They're going to be able to use his sideline-to-sideline speed. He's going to be another annoying, explosive speedster. Like, you better get your freaking gas masks out, your Gatorade bottles, and you better be running hills the week of the Dolphins game, because they are going to make you run and chase all freaking game long. And I love it, man. Raheem Mostert is still a good back for them, but he's been a guy that's really struggled to stay healthy throughout his career and getting up there in age. So I think this also filled a need with a position of value. I really like what they did on day 2. Day 3, you know, Elijah Higgins, I don't think it was a steal or anything, but I really think it makes sense where he fits in with this offense. Think about like Nick Westbrook-Akina in Tennessee, or Alan Lazard in Green Bay, or Juwan Jennings in San Francisco, all those sort of Shanahan systems where, you know, Elijah Higgins is going to be more tight end than he is wide receiver. He's going to play that wing tight end, that's that big slot position where he's down blocking on wide zone, he's leaking out on play action, being a threat over the middle of the field. I didn't really like Elijah Higgins' tape. I didn't like his route running. I didn't like his hands consistency, but he's basically Chase Claypool's body. So like he's not quite as fast as Chase, but he is fast relative to his size. And I think in this offense, he's just kind of a chess piece for Mike McDaniel. And I could see him having a few plays over the next couple of years where you're like, hey, that was pretty good stuff from Elijah Higgins getting put in a good spot to succeed there. Then you got Ryan Hayes in the 7th round. Again, just O-line depth. He played tackle at Michigan. Probably the worst anchor in this class for any position, like any player along the offensive line. He strikes wide with his hands. He doesn't protect his chest, and he doesn't have a lot of play strength. So I see him much more as a guard at the next level. He does have the athleticism, though, to block this wide zone system. So as a backup, he's fine, but just don't expect anything from him, Dolphins fans. He's not your savior at right tackle. I don't think that was available for you in this draft as soon as Matthew Bergeron came off the board to the Falcons. But with what they had, I like what the Dolphins did. So we're just grading off of what they did with what they had, and that's going to be an A for me for the Miami Dolphins with a really, really nice pair of 2nd and 3rd round picks. Then we got the New England Patriots, who made 1 million picks, and this was the most Patriots draft ever. I guess I can't say it's the most Patriots draft ever because this is pretty much them every year. Couple of scheme fit defensive players in the 2nd and 3rd round, and then a bunch of special teamers and small school guys on day 3 with an off-field character concern guy sprinkled in there. We'll go through this, but I really do think this was a classic Belichick draft. But I love what they did in the 1st round, man. They trade down and still get Christian Gonzalez. He's this remarkable, like, prototype, built in a lab type of corner. He's got good, not great tape, I would say, but the sky's the limit for him. You know, Belichick wants the freedom to be able to kind of run whatever he wants, whenever he wants, and I think with the right coaching, Christian Gonzalez can not just provide that scheme flexibility, but he can become a number 1 corner that they haven't really had since, you know, I guess J.C. Jackson had like 1 year as that guy, Stephon Gilmore, Darrelle Revis, like they've been missing that piece at least for a couple years now, or at least 1 year. You know, J.C. Jackson had that one pop-up year, but you get the point. Like they want that player in this defense, and I think they got that. I know they have depth and a variety of talent with all the 3 different Joneses that they have, but those can now become more matchup pieces, and Gonzalez can hopefully become their number 1. So to me, that was a steal. I thought he would be going off the board well before 17. And for him to get past Washington, once that happened, it officially became a certified steal from me. And then they take Keion White in the 2nd round. You know, I laughed about the idea of him going in the 1st round. I kind of laughed about him getting invited to the NFL draft. I just think, you know, I don't know if he is the best agent ever or what, but this was like the best marketing ploy I've ever seen for a college prospect. The fact that he was mocked in the top 10 is insane to me. I get that he is big and fast, but his tape is not good. He's a tweener. He is 24 years old, and he didn't even test as well as he was supposed to. So for me, this was the absolute earliest I could have seen him going. And now that we're talking about a mid-2nd round pick into a defense that has a hybrid front, and eventually I think he can become the Dietrich Wise replacement, but he's got to become a good football player first, right? Like the tools are there. Not only was I underwhelmed by what he did as a pass rusher as far as packaging the coordination between his lower half and his upper half, but I thought he was a really underwhelming run defender as well. I didn't think he processed the run very well. Now, when he saw it, of course, he's 285 pounds. He's really a strong 5 technique, but way too often watching his tape, I saw running backs, quarterbacks run right past his gap, and they would be 2 steps behind him, and then Keion White would turn and be like, oh, like he just ran past me. He, to me, feels like a tight end that put on a bunch of weight and then was asked to play defensive end and didn't get the best coaching. Oh, that feels like what he is to me? That is literally what he is. So this is I ultimately had a 3rd round grade on him because the physical tools are there, right? And I'm a little bit more okay with this pick because so many edge guys were flying off the board at this point. But I just think there's serious bust potential there. I understand the process here from New England. I'm not saying this is even a bad pick, but I certainly don't think this was some certified steal or even great value. I had a true 3rd round grade on him. I did not think they had to take Keion White here. I do think he fits their system and could turn into your kind of Dietrich Wise replacement. But yeah, I'm definitely not excited about this pick, but I understand it. And then Marte Mapu in the third round. This is the absolute classic Bill Belichick pick. Belichick loves trotting out, 3 safety packages. They even announced him as a linebacker when they picked him, but you just kind of have to understand the Patriots defense, where they have their 5-man front. They're kind of a 5-1-6 base, and that 6th defensive back is going to be a hybrid linebacker safety. That's the Adrian Phillips role. And that one linebacker is going to be your true thumper, right? Your Jawan Bentley or Jelani Tavai. They'll run a bunch of other various fronts as well, but that's where Bill Belichick wants to live, is in that 5-1 front. And so Marte Mapu is going to eventually replace Adrian Phillips as that strong safety, and that's the exact role I wanted Mapu to play. So I love the scheme fit. It's a touch rich. I get why he felt Belichick that he had to draft him here, so I can get behind it. So to me, it's a B pick, just a little bit early. But I think he's going to be a good player. I think he can very much become Adrian Phillips. He's not Kyle Duggar. He's not Jeremy Chin. He's not as athletic as those guys. He can't go play deep coverage like those players can. No, to me, he's Adrian Phillips, and he's in a great spot, a great system to succeed. I think he has a better chance of becoming a player than Keon White. Not that Keon White was a horrible pick, but I do believe in Marte Mapu in this system quite a bit. But if we're going off of my grading criteria, it is by definition a B. They took, to me, a 4th-round player in the 3rd. Trying to keep things consistent there with what I had with these guys pre-draft. But with the fit, I could get behind an A grade for this. I think he's going to be a good player. So you get to day 3, and Jake Andrews in the 4th round. This is one where I would actually kind of stand my ground and say no, I think that's a little bit freaking early, Bill. This is one of the first day 3 picks in the draft. Jake Andrews is a fine player, but he's undersized. He's not a great athlete. I don't really see a potential starter in his game. And if you're still in the 4th round taking offensive linemen, I don't want you taking almost assured backup centers. I just don't see starter traits with him. Sure, he could surprise and become a low-end starter someday. Maybe he blows me away and becomes a really good starter, and I'm just completely wrong. But based on what I watched, I do think this was a reach. And then, again, taking a kicker early 4th round. I just can't get behind this. How often do we see Bill Belichick taking these early picks, throwing them at kickers, and not just Bill Belichick, just teams in general, wait till the 6th round to draft a kicker? That is my stance on this. Maybe late 5th if you're completely filled up, but it's a dart throw, and this is way too early to throw that dart. City So, though, in the middle of the 4th, this is what I'm talking about. A guy that has a chance to become a starter. I really liked City So's game. He's got that dickhead mentality. He's a great athlete. Just needs to continue refining his technique. And I wouldn't be surprised if City So becomes a starter someday for the New England Patriots. Lower level of competition, so it's hard to know exactly how well all that stuff's going to translate, but he's got really good tape. I'm a fan of him, so that's a great pick. And then, Antonio Mafi is incredibly raw, but with the right coaching, he has great get off. He has outstanding core strength about him. They got to work with him at the Shrine Bowl. The Patriots staff did, and I believe in Antonio Mafi here as well. So that's the difference to me between taking Jake Andrews and City So or Antonio Mafi is I think those guys could potentially be starters, as opposed to Jake Andrews. I think was more of a 6th or 7th round guy. But in the conglomerate, bringing those guys in, you feel pretty good about hitting on at least one of them to be a good player for you. And then Keyshawn Boutte is the kind of dart throw that I love in the 6th round, especially for a Patriots team that, what do we keep saying about them? They need juice. They need high-end playmakers. They have enough depth. So bring in Keyshawn Boutte, see if Bill Belichick can put the fear of God in him and get his ass to work, because this is a guy that's feuded with coaches. I don't know if he's out of shape because he had a 29-inch vertical. Come on, Keyshawn Boutte. What is going on there? You are way too good of an athlete to have the worst vertical jump in this draft. There are obvious red flags there with him, but his tape you go back to 2021, like there was conversation about him being potentially the first wide receiver in this draft class. It obviously didn't go that way. He declares as a true junior out of LSU, ready to get to the pros. So if he can mature and become a professional, you could get a steal there, or you could cut him and you're none the wiser, right? Is that the saying? Anyway, you take a punter in the 6th round. That's much better. You can get behind that. But I also love the Demario Douglas pick out of Liberty, kind of in stride with what we said. Like, they need dynamism, they need speed and playmakers and guys that can provide some explosiveness to that offense. And I really think Demario Douglas can do that. I'm not going to say he was as good as Tank Dell, but very similar as far as the route running at a tiny size and a guy that is just really difficult for defensive backs to catch up with and get their hands on. I would argue that Douglas was even better with the ball in his hands, although Dell was just a better true wide receiver. Douglas can, if nothing else, be a fantastic return man for them. They were putting Marcus Jones out there on offense last year. Granted, he was good at it. Because they didn't really have a guy like this. Now they have someone that's actually a wide receiver who can, do the screens and jet sweeps and all that stuff. And then just a couple of basically identical picks with the end of the 6th round, end of the 7th round. They just sorted their spreadsheet by 40-yard dash time and just picked those two guys. Amir Speed, Isaiah Bolden, both ran 4.33s. Speed was at Georgia for 4 years, and if you can't beat out some of those corners at Georgia over the last couple of years when you have 4.33 speed, clearly you're just not a very good football player. He goes to Michigan State and he's getting torched all year, but he's fast. He can cover kicks. And then I didn't get to Isaiah Bolden's tape at Jackson State. Could be a little bit more of a surprise there potentially, but I think they're both just special teamers that maybe with good coaching could turn into something. They've had some success going this route with guys like Jonathan Jones and even to a lesser degree Keon Crossan years ago. So again, a very Bill Belichick draft that included kind of all of the cliches: a trade down in the 1st round, a couple of like hybrid role-playing defensive players, a kicker in the 4th round, a bunch of small school players, a off-field gamble. This is and the speedy special teamers at the end of the draft. I think it's a fine draft. I give it a B+. I think they reached on some value. They always do this. And, I had reached a point where I was giving them way too much benefit of the doubt. I think sticking to my own evals on these things is perfectly fine, because the Patriots have really not been the best drafting team over the last 5-6 years. They've kind of lost that Bill Belichick knows exactly what he's doing benefit of the doubt. They've had some good drafts. They've had some worse drafts. And I think this is going to have a little bit of both in it. But I think they're going to get some football players out of it. Then the New York Jets to wrap this thing up. And I really can't endorse the Will McDonald pick. I think it was early. I get the traits. He's really athletic. He's got great arm length, 35.5 inches. But you're talking about an undersized edge who, granted, you can project to do better at the next level, but played in one of those weird 3-3-5 fronts where he's got to play 4-eye all the time, meaning he didn't have great production in his last year at Iowa State. And he's going to be 24 this year. And I think they've also passed on better players. I think Nolan Smith is just a much better version of Will McDonald. I would have rather gambled on like Miles Murphy with these traits, especially for a guy like Will McDonald, where he's not going to play much in year one. Are we even sure that he's going to be a better player than Bryce Huff, who's on the roster, who had one of the most efficient pass rushing seasons in the NFL last year as their kind of 5th rotational edge? I just, to me, with the 15th pick, you do have to think about need a little bit. They already took Jermaine Johnson in the 1st round last year, and he struggled to get on the field. Like, I have no doubt that Robert Salah sees something he likes in Will McDonald and can get something out of him if he has to play him a lot. But for a team that this factors in too, you just traded for a 39, 40-year-old quarterback. You're trying to win right freaking now. I don't see how Will McDonald helps the Jets this year, who all of a sudden were probably forced to draft for need more than anybody in the first round because that clock is really ticking with Aaron Rodgers. You might only get 1 year with Aaron Rodgers. So to me, it's like I'd almost rather reach, if you're going to reach, which I think they did, I'd rather reach on an offensive lineman. I'd rather reach on a wide receiver where they could have had their pick of any wide receiver in this draft, a tight end like Dalton Kincaid, Brian Branch for your defense, who's going to make more of an impact now. Like, look, Will McDonald could very well turn into a really good player, but for me, this was a really important asset to maximize the Aaron Rodgers window, and I think this might have been one of the worst picks they could have made for that. It's not a full-on F because this really isn't so much about Will McDonald, even if I think there were other edge players, most notably Nolan Smith, that would have been better for you. But I think you got to walk out of that pick pretty underwhelmed, almost universally, if you're a Jets fan. I did like the Joe Tippmann pick, however. I'm going to kind of tentatively give this an A. I don't fully understand taking him ahead of John Michael Schmitz. And it's, if you're being extremely nitpicky, like a little bit earlier than I liked Joe Tippmann with the 45th pick in the draft or 43rd, whatever this ultimately was. If I was doing A-, B+ grades, this is probably somewhere around there. But I do think addressing that offensive line was important. They needed another piece in there. I would prefer to have been someone that could also play tackle. I don't think Tippmann can do that. But that's why I like the Carter Warren pick coming up here in just a second. But I can also understand they feel like they needed the better athlete in Joe Tippmann as opposed to the better football player right now instead of John Michael Schmitz. I would argue if you watch John Michael Schmitz block wide zone at Minnesota, you're kind of silly for passing on that because he's amazing at it. So I'm kind of talking down on this pick. I think it was a very good pick. He's going to be very helpful for them, but I think there's a chance they look back on this and they're like, dang it, we probably should have taken John Michael Schmitz. But hey, get some offensive line help on the interior there. There weren't any tackles that really would have been a good answer for you at this spot. So, it was either going to be Tippmann or John Michael Schmitz. I'm not going to reduce it from an A just because there was one other player that I thought was a little bit better. So good pick there. And then Carter Warren in the 4th, I think is a really nice pick. He's, I think, going to be competing as a starting tackle right away. I like Max Mitchell, who was a 4th round pick last year as well. I think Carter Warren is a really good pass protector and a horrible run blocker. I think Max Mitchell's a really good run blocker and a pretty bad pass protector. So, maybe they want to play matchups at tackle, depending on who they're going up against that week. Carter Warren has great length. He's really experienced. He has really good technique. Not the best athlete, though. Foot speed can be a concern at times. But, again, I think he's going to compete as a starting tackle, an older prospect, coming off an injury. If he was able to finish that final season at Pitt, I think he might have gotten pushed up into the 3rd round of the draft. So I'm a fan of Carter Warren. I think that's a good pick. And then great pick of Israel Abanikanda in the 5th round. You got Hall coming off the injury. This takes a little bit of pressure off of him to come in and come back and be that feature back. Abanikanda is a great scheme fit here. I had always said I would love to see him go to a wide zone offense. My pro comp for him is Raheem Mostert, the kind of slower, bigger Miami version of Raheem Mostert, as opposed to the 195-pound version that played in San Francisco, who had elite speed. I really love the fit, and I think he's over time going to be a really efficient change of pace back. Not that Breece Hall isn't fast, but he's going to make you keep running to the sideline when you do got to take Breece Hall off. They take Zaire Barnes in the 6th round. He was definitely down the board a little bit as far as developmental linebackers. I'll be honest, I do think there was other options that I liked better. But hey, we're into the 6th round. We're past the point of critiquing them for passing on other players. So he's a developmental linebacker. He's got speed and maybe over time can develop into a starter while he covers kicks. I did like his tape when he was kind of chasing down screens and outside zone. Like, he runs the alley really well. To use some scouting lingo, like when he is coming from a weak side linebacker and he's got to blow up something to the sideline, it flashes there. So there is something there. I don't think it's a horrible pick. We'll see what he can do. And then they take Jarek Bernard-Converse, the cornerback out of LSU. I didn't have a draftable grade on him. He's been a starter for 5 years, basically, going back to Oklahoma State. And really everywhere he's been wildly aggressive. A boomer bust coverage approach. Maybe they look him at as a guy that can, if you have to play him as a backup, you might luck into a good game because he's jumping everything. But, teams are going to have scouting reports on this guy. They're going to come out, run a double move on him, and he's going to be, burnt toast. So I'm definitely worried about that. I don't know if you coach that out of a guy that's 23 years old. So I didn't really see it with him. If you want a developmental guy, I thought there were better options available. So it is what it is. It's a late 6th round pick. Not going to really impact their draft grade, but I'm going to call my shot that he's not going to turn into anything, which is not an impressive call for a late 6th round pick, but you get the point. Now, you got to love getting Zach Kuntz in the 7th round. This was one of my guys in this draft. I encourage you to check out my top 10 tight ends video where I just rave about Zach Kuntz and really get into his backstory. But basically, he's just reaching his physical peak at the tight end position. He's had to gain weight. He transferred out of Penn State. He's been really productive at Old Dominion. And in his last year, he was on pace to having another really productive season, but he got hurt like week 4. So, level of competition and a lack of production, only 15 starts in his career. I understand why he fell. But dude, this guy is 6'7", 255 pounds, literally had the most athletic testing performance that any tight end has ever had. And his tape isn't that bad. So in the 7th round, this blows my mind. Falling to the 4th or the 5th round, sure, absolutely. But to get him here with a tight end group that has some players but has no dynamism, who's to say that with Aaron Rodgers throwing him the ball, Zach Kuntz can't be a much more athletic version of Robert Tonyan for him, who was an undrafted pickup, right? So I love that pick. I think, he could be nothing, but he could be an all-pro tight end. Like, the range of outcomes on him are pretty damn wild. I had a 3rd round grade on him. So to get him in the 7th, I think that's, like, from a value perspective, one of the biggest steals in the entire draft. So the Jets are going to get a C+ from me. The Will McDonald pick, Joe Douglas, I don't know how you really defend that one. 3 years from now, he could be a good player, but Aaron Rodgers is going to be gone. So, like, great, good work. Like, this had to be a let's freaking go for it right now. And that pick just did not scream that to me. The rest of the draft was pretty good, though. So there's your AFC East. Hope you guys are enjoying the draft grades videos. We're gonna get to the West divisions next, and those will be out over the course of the next 24 hours. So please do hit that like button if you're enjoying. Drop your comments down below where you agree, where you disagree, and make sure you're subscribed. We'll be back soon with another draft grades video. Peace out.